The philosophy of Stoicism is not merely a collection of abstract theories or intellectual propositions. At its heart, it is a demanding, rigorous, and highly practical system of mental training. Its goal is not to interpret the world, but to deliberately and through constant effort change the way we react to it. The entire philosophy is structured around actionable, repeatable exercises designed to cultivate inner tranquility, unshakable resilience, and true freedom. The ultimate aim of all Stoic practice is the attainment of eudaimonia, pronounced eudaimoneia, often translated as human flourishing or living well. For the Stoics, this flourishing is inseparable from virtue, arete. It is the only true good, and its attainment is the sole sufficient condition for happiness. All practices are tools to ensure that one's rational will, prohairesis, remains aligned with this virtue, regardless of external circumstances. The philosophical life, therefore, is not a life of reading books, but a life of constant practical application of these principles. The Stoics referred to these exercises as ascesis, pronounced ascesis, a term from which we derive the modern word asceticism, but which for them simply meant training or discipline. Just as an athlete trains the body, the Stoic trains the mind. The Stoic recognized that the mind, left unchecked, is easily compromised by irrational emotions or passions. These passions, including fear, anger, and excessive pleasure, are not simply feelings. They are errors in judgment that, when acted upon, lead to misery. The purpose of practice is to correct these errors before they take root. The ideal practitioner, though theoretically unattainable by most, is the sage, sophos. The sage is the person whose reason is perfectly developed, whose judgments are always correct, and who experiences absolute apatheia, freedom from irrational passion. All Stoic practices are essentially tools for the prokopton, pronounced prokopton, the person making observable, continuous progress toward this ideal. Central to all Stoic practice is the philosophical separation of the world into two definitive categories. This is the bedrock of their entire therapeutic system, and the first thing a student must internalize. It is known as the dichotomy of control. The dichotomy of control states that some things are up to us, ephahemen, and some things are not up to us, uk ephahemen. Things that are up to us are fundamentally internal. Our opinions, our judgments, our desires, our aversions, and most importantly, our moral will. These are the only things over which we have complete, unassailable control. Things that are not up to us are external, our bodies, property, reputation, health, wealth, the opinions of others, and the outcomes of our actions. These are indifferent things, adiaphora. The most vital Stoic practice is the constant application of this dichotomy to every event, thought, and decision. The moment a negative event occurs, the practitioner must immediately categorize the components. The event itself is external and indifferent. The only thing that matters is the judgment I apply to it, which is internal and within my control. The first essential daily practice flows directly from this dichotomy. It is the discipline of assent, syncatethesis. This discipline is concerned with logic and epistemology, how we know things, and is the foundation of mental tranquility. It is the training of the mind to never give immediate, unquestioned approval, assent, to any sensory impression or thought that carries an emotional charge. When an impression, fantasia, a thought, image, or sensation arrives, The Stoic must treat it not as a truth, but as a proposition to be tested. The core question is always, does this impression correctly categorize something external as a good or an evil? If the impression suggests that the loss of wealth is evil or that public praise is good, the Stoic must withhold assent, recognizing the impression as an error that violates the dichotomy of control. Epictetus famously summarized the entire methodology. Men are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. The source of suffering is not the event, but the judgment applied to the event. The practice, therefore, is to challenge and correct the irrational judgment. To achieve this control over judgment, the Stoics practiced cognitive distancing or objectification. This involves describing an event, not using emotionally charged language, but using cool, objective terms, stripping away all subjective valuation. For example, instead of thinking, "My friend cruelly betrayed me," the objectified thought becomes, "A fellow human being, acting according to their flawed reason, chose to perform an action that resulted in a loss of my time." This practice of radical objectivity is further enhanced by syllogistic examination. The Stoics, masters of logic, would often mentally transform their anxieties into formal logical arguments, syllogisms, to expose the faulty premises. For example, if the passion is fear of losing one's home, premise 1, irrational judgment, losing my home is a catastrophe. Premise 2, logical rule, catastrophes are things that destroy my capacity for virtue. Conclusion, self-correction. Since the loss of a home is an external, indifferent thing and does not destroy my internal capacity for virtue, the premise is false, and therefore the fear is unfounded. The judgment is withdrawn. The systematic practice of the discipline of assent leads to ateleia, or intellectual freedom. This is the state where the mind is fully autonomous, no longer enslaved to the false, irrational impressions constantly generated by the external world or the lower, non-rational parts of the soul. This practice of correcting judgment is constant, requiring daily, moment-to-moment vigilance. The Stoics must be like the watchman at the gate of a fortress, carefully examining every impression before allowing it entry into the inner citadel of the mind. The deep psychological understanding that one's inner peace is determined solely by the quality of one's judgment is the greatest legacy of the Stoic practice. It is the foundational principle that was later directly inherited and systematized by modern psychotherapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which mandates the identification and replacement of distorted, irrational beliefs. This deep reliance on internal autonomy sets the stage for the second great discipline, which deals with the control of our deepest urges and needs, moving from intellectual certainty to emotional stability. The next essential practice focuses on how to align our desires with the universe's unyielding, predetermined flow, demanding the cultivation of acceptance and the eradication of all irrational cravings. The deep psychological understanding that one's inner peace is determined solely by the quality of one's judgment now leads us to the second great discipline, the discipline of desire, boulesis. While the discipline of assent teaches us how to think about the world, the discipline of desire teaches us what to want from it. Its purpose is to align our individual wishes with the predetermined universal flow of the logos, nature or providence, demanding the cultivation of acceptance and the eradication of all irrational cravings. The fundamental goal of this discipline is to ensure that the individual desires only what is achievable and rational, which for the Stoic means desiring virtue alone, and that the individual accepts, without complaint, everything else that happens, as it is outside the sphere of one's control. The result of mastering the discipline of desire is the systematic eradication of the four destructive irrational passions, pati, which are considered the diseases of the soul. Distress, lupe, the irrational response to a present evil, e.g., sadness and anxiety. Fear, phobos, the irrational response to an anticipated evil, lust, epithymia, the irrational desire for a supposed future good, e.g., craving, greed. Excessive pleasure, hedon, the irrational elation over a present supposed good, e.g., intoxication, reckless joy. The Stoics argued that these four passions are not natural or inevitable. They are, in fact, diseases of the mind caused by the incorrect assent to the judgment that an external thing is a true good or a true evil. They must be eliminated, not merely moderated. The chief practice for achieving this emotional fortress is premeditation of evils, premeditatio malorum. This is a foundational technique of cognitive inoculation advocated heavily by Seneca, which requires the practitioner to deliberately and in detail mentally rehearse the misfortunes, losses, and adversities that could happen. This is not pessimism, it is proactive resilience. The exercise involves facing, in the mind, the potential loss of one's health, wealth, loved ones, social standing, or even life itself. The practitioner asks, what if my reputation were ruined tomorrow? What if I were unjustly exiled? How would I respond? The purpose of this rigorous mental rehearsal is twofold: neutralization of shock. By confronting potential adversity when the mind is calm, the Stoic ensures that when and if the misfortune actually arrives, it does not arrive as an emotional shock. The mind has already rehearsed the event and prepared a rational response, minimizing the gap between the event and the application of reason. Affirmation of inner resources. The practice forces the mind to recognize that the loss of any external, indifferent, whether wealth or health, does not compromise the one true good, which is the internal capacity for virtue. The exercise proves that even in the worst-case scenario, the capacity for reasoned judgment remains intact. Seneca summarized this practice brilliantly, advising, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. By fearing what may never come, one endures the suffering twice. Praemeditatio malorum ensures that suffering is only borne once, and only when the event is truly present." Another essential practice flowing from the discipline of desire is the exercise of voluntary discomfort, ascesis in its physical sense. While praemeditatio malorum is mental, this practice is physical. It requires the Stoic to periodically, and by choice, subject themselves to minor, self-imposed hardships that mimic the conditions of genuine poverty or adversity. This might involve deliberately abstaining from food, fasting, choosing to wear coarse or threadbare clothing, sleeping on the hard floor instead of a comfortable bed, or enduring the cold without resorting to excessive heating. The goal of voluntary discomfort is purely therapeutic and diagnostic. It achieves three critical objectives: curing dependency. It breaks the mind's psychological dependency on comforts, luxury, and superfluous possessions. It proves to the self that the supposed necessities of an affluent life are merely preferences, easily dispensed with without compromising one's function or happiness. building resilience. It hardens the spirit against genuine misfortune. By experiencing voluntarily what one fears involuntarily, the Stoic proves that the feared condition is, in fact, manageable and not a catastrophe. Appreciation of simplicity. It provides a radical clarification of what is truly necessary for life. As the Stoic endures the discomfort, they realize how little is required for survival and how quickly the body and mind adapt. Seneca encouraged this practice, urging his students, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, and with the knowledge that you are at present undergoing what you may someday be forced to undergo." A related practice is the active devaluation of indifference. This exercise requires the practitioner to regularly remind themselves that external things, wealth, health, fame, or pleasure, are not inherently good or evil. They are mere material for the practice of virtue. Wealth, for example, is a preferred indifferent because it allows for the practice of generosity, of virtue, but it is not good in itself. It can be used for vice just as easily. Poverty is a dispreferred indifferent, but it provides the material for the practice of perseverance and temperance, virtues. By consistently devaluing these external objects, the Stoic weakens their emotional hold, making the potential loss of a preferred indifferent less distressing and the possession of a dispreferred indifferent less demoralizing. The reserve clause, heretic heresies, is the final, ultimate tool of acceptance within this discipline. Every action, every plan, and every desire directed toward an external outcome must be undertaken with a mental caveat. I will do this if fate permits. This clause is the cognitive armor against disappointment. By prefixing every intention with the acknowledgement that the outcome is not up to me, the Stoic ensures that when the desired external result fails to materialize, the mind is not surprised or wounded. The failure of the outcome is simply the realization of the initial condition fate did not permit. The only true success was performing the action itself with virtue, which remains internal and fully achieved. This disciplined approach to managing desire and fear creates a state of eustatheia, equanimity or firmness, where the mind is emotionally stable and undisturbed by external circumstances. The Stoic, having mastered their desires and fears, is free to focus all their remaining energy on the one thing that truly defines their humanity, their relationship with others. This now leads us to the final, necessary discipline of the Stoic philosophical training. The Stoic, having secured their inner life through the disciplines of assent, correct judgment, and desire, emotional control, must now turn outward. This leads to the discipline of action, horm, the final and highest form of practice, which governs the Stoics' social behavior, ethics, and duties to the world. Its purpose is to ensure that all external actions are rational, just, and benevolent, aligning the individual's conduct with the harmonious social nature of the universe. The fundamental ethical commitment of this discipline is the fulfillment of duty, kathekon. Kathekon means appropriate action, or what is fitting. It is the constant recognition and execution of the duties imposed by one's various social roles. The Stoic believes that nature has made human beings rational and social, and therefore our duty is to use reason to serve the wider human community. The Stoic must constantly ask, what action is fitting for me now, given my role as a parent, a citizen, an employee, or simply a fellow human being. The successful performance of kathekon is its own reward. The external outcome of the action is once again an indifferent, which must be accepted under the reserve clause, learned in the discipline of desire. The scope of this duty is defined by the core Stoic political and ethical concept of cosmopolitanism, cosmopolites, which means citizen of the cosmos. The Stoic views themselves not primarily as citizens of a single city or nation, but as citizens of the entire universe, bound by reason and natural law to all other rational beings. This concept leads to the practice of the concentric circles of concern. The Stoic philosopher Hierocles famously described the proper orientation of our duties using a diagram of nesting circles. The practice is to gradually and rationally draw the outer circles inward, mentally moving the well-being of strangers closer to the center, where the well-being of one's immediate family typically resides. This exercise counters the natural human tendency towards self-interest and parochialism, training the mind to extend benevolence and justice to all people, recognizing the fundamental brotherhood of humanity. This universal duty requires the Stoic to actively engage in the world, not retreat from it. The ideal Stoic is an engaged, ethical participant in social and political life, using their honed reason for the benefit of all. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, viewed his role as the ultimate kathekon, dedicating his entire life to the burdensome, painful task of imperial administration, not for personal glory, but out of absolute commitment to the well-being of the empire's vast community. One of the most essential and hardest practices within the discipline of action is the systematic destruction of anger, orge. Stoicism views anger not merely as a destructive emotion, but as a temporary madness and a fundamental betrayal of our rational, social nature. Seneca, in his famous essay on anger, provides extensive, practical advice for its prevention and eradication. The core practice is to treat anger as a voluntarily chosen vice, not an inevitable reaction. The moment the first, fleeting impulse of irritation arrives, what the Stoics called the first movement, protekinesis, the practitioner must immediately apply the discipline of assent. The anger stems from the irrational judgment that one has been wronged or insulted, which implies that something external, reputation, status, has been compromised. The Stoic must immediately correct this judgment, reminding themselves, the insult is an external indifferent. The opinion of the offender is beyond my control. Only my reaction is within my control. To choose anger is to willfully destroy my own internal tranquility and abandon my duty to act rationally. Seneca advised the practice of delay. The moment anger is felt, postpone all action until reason has returned. The best cure for anger is delay. By pausing, the intensity of the initial judgment dissipates, allowing the rational mind to reassert control. A related practice, crucial for maintaining social benevolence, is the correction of others through forgiveness and pity. The Stoic views the wrongdoer not as a malicious enemy, but as a misguided brother, someone who has, through ignorance, failed to properly use their rational faculty. As Marcus Aurelius frequently reminds himself, when someone does a wrong, the Stoic should pity them, recognizing that they are doing what they think is right, or more accurately, doing what they think will bring them happiness, even if their judgment about what constitutes the good is fatally flawed. This shift from anger to pity disarms the offense and preserves the Stoic's own tranquility, maintaining the commitment to benevolence toward all rational beings. Another vital practice is learning to receive criticism and insults with indifference. Stoics understood that the desire for praise, doxa, and the fear of insult are powerful external dependencies that destroy inner freedom. The practice here is twofold. If the criticism is true, the Stoic must accept it as valuable, free instruction on how to correct a character flaw. The criticism is not a source of shame, but a gift that aids in the pursuit of virtue. If the criticism is false, the Stoic must dismiss it immediately as merely the erroneous opinion of an external, uniformed mind, which holds no power over one's own internal reality. In either case, the practice ensures that the Stoic maintains their inner balance, never allowing the volatile opinions of others to dictate their self-worth. This independence from external opinion is a mark of true self-sufficiency. Finally, the discipline of action requires the practice of philanthropia, philo meaning love, anthropos meaning humanity, active love for humankind. This practice translates the abstract theory of cosmopolitanism into daily acts of practical kindness, fairness, and justice. It is the active commitment to making the world a slightly better, more rational place, not through grand gestures, but through the consistent, humble execution of one's duty. Whether serving a client, aiding a neighbor, or governing an empire, the motivation must be rational benevolence, which is the only fitting action for a rational social being. The combined effect of the three disciplines, assent, desire, and action, is the constant integrated practice of virtue. This daily self-mastery requires the final, indispensable tool of the Stoic, the one practice that binds the entire system together: daily self-review and philosophical journaling. This practice ensures accountability and continuous progress, moving the practitioner ever closer to the ideal of the sage. The combined effect of the three disciplines, assent, desire, and action, requires a robust system of accountability and continuous correction. This daily self-mastery requires the final, indispensable tool of the Stoic, the practice of daily self-review and philosophical journaling. This discipline ensures that the lessons learned from theory are rigorously applied to the chaos of daily life. The Stoic practice is structured around the natural rhythm of the day, divided into two essential mental exercises: morning preparation and evening review. The morning preparation, prokodon. The first task upon waking is not to engage with the world, but to mentally prepare for it. The morning preparation, prokodon, literally meaning calling on the watch, is a proactive rehearsal of potential adversity and a restatement of philosophical principles. The practice begins by reminding the self of the cosmopolitan creed and the duty of benevolence. The practitioner mentally rehearses the difficulties that the day is likely to bring, particularly those involving other people. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and unsociable." This is not cynicism. It is a form of premeditatio malorum applied specifically to social interaction. By anticipating the flaws of others, their inevitable poor judgments, the Stoic removes the element of surprise, which is the primary fuel for anger and distress. The person who acts unjustly is simply acting according to their predictable, flawed nature, not as a personal offense. The second part of the morning practice is the statement of intent. The Stoic explicitly defines the virtues they intend to practice throughout the day. Today, I will practice patience when faced with delay, or today, I will practice fairness in all my dealings, or today, I will accept whatever external events occur with indifference. This statement of intent sets the mind's internal compass for the day, ensuring that every subsequent action is measured against a conscious, virtuous goal. The purpose is to enter the battlefield of the day armed with premeditated strategies, rather than reacting blindly to every external stimulus. The evening review, examine animi. The culmination of the daily practice is the evening review, examine animi, or examination of the soul, performed before sleep. This practice, stressed heavily by Seneca, is a non-judgmental, detailed audit of the day's actions, emotions, and judgments. The review is structured around a series of penetrating questions designed to expose and correct errors in application. In what respect did I overcome an irrational passion today? Successes in the discipline of desire. In what respect did I fail to perform my proper duty, kathekon, failures in the discipline of action? What habit did I break, and what habit did I form or progress in ascesis? Did I assent to any faulty, irrational impression? Failures in the discipline of assent. What could I have done better? Focus on future correction. The review must be conducted with the detachment of an impartial judge. The purpose is not self-flagellation or guilt, which are themselves destructive passions, lupe. The purpose is diagnosis and correction. By systematically cataloging one's errors, the Stoic converts past mistakes into future lessons, improving the internal training manual. This daily journaling and reflection is the mechanism by which the Procopton, the student making progress, ensures that their journey toward the sage is one of continuous, incremental improvement. It is the vital feedback loop that turns philosophical theory into lived experience. Stoic mindfulness, the practice of attention, prosoche. The bridge between the morning's preparation and the evening's review is the moment-to-moment practice of attention, known as prosoche, pronounced pros-o-ki. Prosoche is the core concept of Stoic mindfulness, the continuous, sustained awareness of one's own governing reason, hegemonikon, in action. Prosoche is the watchman at the gate of the mind, ensuring that the dichotomy of control is applied instantaneously every time an event or impression occurs. It is the practice of living entirely in the present moment, where all moral action takes place. When an external event happens, there is a tiny, often imperceptible gap before the emotional reaction sets in. The discipline of assent taught the Stoic to widen that gap. Prosoche is the mental effort to occupy that gap, ensuring that the rational will intercept the raw, external impression before it can be interpreted as a good or an evil and trigger a destructive passion. The practice of prosoche involves a continuous, threefold internal dialogue. Stop. Immediately halt the automatic emotional reaction. Categorize. Apply the dichotomy of control. Is this internal, up to me, or external, not up to me? Act. Proceed with the rational, virtuous action, kathekon. This active engagement with the present is crucial because the Stoic understood that the past is fixed and the future is uncertain and outside our control. The only arena of freedom and moral action is the present moment. The use of Stoic maxims, hypomnemata, to aid in the instantaneous application of prosoche in the heat of the moment the Stoics relied heavily on maxims or memoranda, hypomnemata. These were short, memorable, powerful phrases summarizing a key philosophical principle designed to be repeated mentally until they became an automatic cognitive reflex. Examples of these power phrases, often found repeated in the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius and the Enchiridion of Epictetus, include, "It is nothing to me," a correction against attachment to external indifference. "This, too, shall pass," a reminder of the impermanence of fortune, whether good or bad. "Just a man, acting as he is capable," a correction against anger toward another's poor judgment. "Where is the evil? In the judgment," a direct application of the discipline of assent. "Is this necessary?" a check against superfluous action, language, or desire. The practice involves deliberately writing down and memorizing these maxims during the morning preparation and then deploying them instantly as mental countermeasures the moment an emotion, fear, anger, desire, begins to rise during the day. The diligent combination of morning preparation, attention, prosoj, maxims, and evening review forms the operational core of the Stoic philosophical life. This continuous loop of preparation, application, and analysis is what distinguishes the active, engaged Stoic from the passive philosophical theorist. The entire system is a continuous program of self-improvement and self-rescue aimed at converting philosophical understanding into unshakable, habitual virtue. The success of this system depends on the clarity of the ultimate purpose, which brings us back to the fundamental nature of the universe and our place within the grand design. The diligent combination of daily philosophical exercises, preparation, attention, maxims, and review is what transforms the prokopton, the one making progress, into a truly self-mastered individual. The success of this demanding system, however, depends on the clarity of the ultimate purpose, which brings us back to the fundamental nature of the universe and our place within the grand design. This is the realm of Stoic physics. For the ancient Stoics, philosophy was a comprehensive whole, a vast unified system built upon three inseparable pillars: logic, ethics, and physics. The ethical practices, the disciplines of assent, a desire, and action, were built upon the logical tools and grounded in the physical understanding of the cosmos. Without this physical understanding, the commitment to acceptance and duty would be merely an emotionally draining effort. With it, acceptance becomes a rational necessity. Stoic physics is fundamentally monistic and materialistic. The Stoics believed that the entire cosmos is a single, material, interconnected entity governed by a rational divine force called the Logos, nature, reason, or God. This Logos is an active, fiery substance, pneuma, that permeates and organizes all matter, acting as the soul of the universe. This foundational belief in the inherent rationality and benevolence of the universe leads directly to the core tenet of the Stoic life: acceptance, syncathesis of events. Since the universe is governed by the perfect divine Logos, everything that happens, the good, the bad, the random, is part of a perfectly ordered, necessary causal chain. This chain is known as fate, Heimermann. The Stoic belief in fate is not passive fatalism, but rather a profound understanding of causal determinism. Every event is the result of previous causes, linked together in an unbroken sequence. Therefore, trying to wish or rail against any present or past event is literally trying to wish for the universe to be other than it is, a fundamentally irrational and self-defeating endeavor. The Stoic practice flowing from this understanding is the amor fati, love of fate. This is the radical commitment to not just endure what happens, but to willfully love it, viewing it as the necessary perfect expression of the rational logos. The practitioner learns to stop fighting reality, recognizing that the universe, being perfectly rational, cannot be fundamentally wrong. Epictetus famously used the analogy of the dog tied to a moving cart. The dog has two choices. It can resist, be dragged painfully, and still end up where the cart goes. Or it can willfully run alongside the cart, fulfilling its destiny willingly and freely. The circumstances are fated, but the attitude toward them is free. The practice is to always choose the willing run. The second critical practice derived from Stoic physics is the goal of living according to nature, homologumenos to physio. For the Stoics, nature has two meanings, and the goal is to align with both. Universal nature, the cosmos, accepting the laws of fate and the impermanence of all things. Human nature, reason, living exclusively by the faculty of reason, logos, which is the unique divine spark that defines humanity, and acting in a way that benefits the social community, our natural state. Therefore, living according to nature means living a rational, virtuous, and social life in harmony with both the grand order of the cosmos and the inherent design of human beings. Every Stoic practice is a technique to ensure the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty of the soul, is operating purely on reason, fulfilling this natural mandate. This physical doctrine reinforces the practices of premeditatio malorum and objectification. Since all external things, health, wealth, the body, are transient material forms subject to the cosmic flow of pneuma and logos, their inevitable decay and eventual loss are not tragic failures of fate, but natural, predictable necessities of the physical world. Their loss is merely the changing of one indifferent form into another. Stoic logic, the final check on irrationality. The third pillar of the system, Stoic logic, serves as the final, rigorous foundation for all the ethical practices. It is the practice of thinking clearly and correctly, ensuring that the discipline of assent is based not on mere feeling, but on sound reason. Stoic logic was highly advanced for its time, concerned not only with formal reasoning, like syllogisms, but also with epistemology, the theory of knowledge. Their logical practices were entirely therapeutic, designed to prevent the mind from making the rash, incorrect judgments that lead to passion. The practice of testing impressions uses logic to scrutinize the raw sensory data, fantasia. The Stoic distinguished between a mere impression and a cognitive impression, cataleptic fantasia, one that is so clear, distinct, and compelling that it forces the rational mind to assent to its truth. However, when an emotional impression arrives, say the thought, "That man's insult is a terrible evil," the Stoic must deploy a logical countermeasure, often referred to as counter-assent. The practice involves recognizing the statement as a hypothetical proposition to be tested against the established truths of physics and ethics. The logical test is simple. Does this proposition contradict the core tenets that virtue is the only good and that external events are indifferent? The impression says, insult, you're evil. The logical truth says, evil, semi-ish, destruction of virtue. Therefore, the impression is logically and fundamentally false. The logical error is exposed, and the assent is withdrawn, preventing the passion, anger, or distress from taking root. A highly practical logical practice is the use of definitive terms, or degeneralization. When facing an overwhelming situation, the Stoic uses precise, logical categorization to break the fear down. For example, a man facing an immense chaotic battle would logically deconstruct the event. I am not facing chaos. I am facing a series of sequential, individual tasks: a march, a line of shields, a series of individual arrow shots, and a duty to hold my specific position. Only my action in this specific present moment is within my control. This logical reduction of the vast into the manageable is a powerful tool for maintaining attentiveness, prosocial, and neutralizing overwhelming fear. The combined force of physics and logic provides the Stoic with an unshakable intellectual certainty. They know why they must accept fate, physics, and how to correctly process the events of fate, logic. This certainty is the source of the Stoics' tranquility, ataraxia, allowing them to fulfill their duty and progress toward the final, defining state of the sage, which is characterized by the 4 cardinal virtues. The certainty provided by Stoic physics and logic is the source of the Stoics' unshakable tranquility, allowing them to fulfill their duty and progress toward the final, defining state of the sage, sophos. The ultimate internal reward of the entire system of practice is the mastery of the 4 cardinal virtues. For the Stoics, virtue, arete, is a singular unified excellence, a perfected state of the rational soul. However, it is conventionally analyzed and understood through 4 essential practical expressions. These 4 virtues are not abstract moral principles. They are practical skills of the mind, cultivated through the 3 disciplines. 1. Wisdom, phronesis, the skill of judgment. Wisdom is the master virtue, the intellectual engine of the Stoic life. It is the practical knowledge of what is truly good, what is truly evil, and what is indifferent. This virtue is the perfect mastery of the discipline of assent. Wisdom is not mere intelligence or encyclopedic knowledge. It is the skill of applied judgment. It is the ability to instantly and accurately categorize every event and impression according to the dichotomy of control and the principles of Stoic physics. The essential components of Stoic wisdom include good sense, the knowledge of what to do, good deliberation, the skill of deciding correctly, and shrewdness, the ability to see beyond appearances. The practice of wisdom means consistently and correctly concluding that only virtue is good and only vice is evil. All external conditions, health, wealth, status, are merely tools for the exercise of wisdom, never the goal themselves. The wise person never makes a mistake in judgment. 2. Justice, dikaiosune, the skill of social action. Justice is the social virtue, the perfect expression of the discipline of action. It is the knowledge of how to treat fellow human beings rightly and fairly, recognizing the inherent rationality and brotherhood of the human community, cosmopolites. Justice is the practical application of the cosmopolitan creed. It demands that the Stoic act in a way that maximizes the benefit of the community, recognizing that individual virtue is intrinsically linked to the well-being of the whole. The components of justice include fairness, treating equals equally, goodness, a natural impulse toward benevolence, and non-injury, refusing to harm others through action or inaction. The practice of justice means strictly adhering to one's duty, kathekon, ensuring that all social interactions are rational, impartial, and driven by a commitment to the common good, regardless of personal cost or external outcome. 3. Temperance, sophrosyn. The skill of self-control. Temperance, or moderation, is the self-mastery virtue, the perfect expression of the discipline of desire. It is the practical knowledge of how to deal with desires, aversions, and pleasures, ensuring that the rational will, prohairesis, remains in control of the bodily appetites. Temperance is the skill of ordering one's impulses. It is not about ascetic denial of pleasure, but about ensuring that pleasures and comforts are tools, not masters. The temperate person is not controlled by their cravings for food, luxury, or excessive comfort. The components of temperance include self-control, the ability to delay gratification, decorum, acting appropriately in social contexts, and orderliness, maintaining an internal and external structure that supports reason. The practice of temperance means diligently engaging in voluntary discomfort and premeditatio malorum to inoculate the mind against dependency, thereby securing inner freedom from the tyranny of bodily demands. 4. Courage, Andrea, the skill of endurance. Courage is the resilience virtue, the perfect expression of accepting the inevitable without fear or panic. It is the practical knowledge of how to face hardship, pain, and danger with firmness and constancy, recognizing that fear, phobos, is always an irrational passion. Courage is the skill of dealing with dispreferred indifference. It requires the conviction that no external event, no matter how physically painful or financially devastating, can compromise the only true good, one's internal capacity for virtue. The components of courage include endurance, the ability to bear pain without complaint, confidence, the rational certainty that one can face any external event, and magnanimity, greatness of soul that looks down upon external fortunes. The practice of courage means realizing that death itself is an indifferent, a natural process that is neither good nor evil and therefore cannot be feared. The status of the sage is sophos. The sage is the mythical ideal end state of the philosophical journey, the person whose mind is perfectly virtuous in all 4 categories, operating purely on reason at all times. The sage experiences some apatheia, or the freedom from irrational passion. This is not apathy, but rather tranquility. The soul is undisturbed because all its judgments are correct. The sage experiences eudaimonia, or true human flourishing, because happiness is simply the result of possessing virtue, and the sage possesses perfect virtue. The sage is utterly self-sufficient, autarks, requiring nothing external to maintain their happiness. They are entirely dependent on the unshakable quality of their own rational will. The Stoics generally believed that few, if any, historical figures had ever achieved the true state of the sage. However, the ideal serves a crucial therapeutic function. It provides a clear, uncompromised benchmark for the Procopton to measure their continuous progress against. The Stoic life is the journey toward the sage, not the guarantee of arrival. The use of indifference, preferred and dispreferred, a critical, final element of Stoic ethics that grounds all practical exercises, is the meticulous distinction regarding indifference, adiaphora. While all external things are indifferent, neither good nor evil, they are not all treated equally in practice. The Stoics divided indifference into 2 major categories: preferred indifference, proegmena. These are external things that are in accordance with nature and are rationally chosen unless they compromise virtue. Examples include health, wealth, a good reputation, and adequate food. The practice, it is rational to pursue preferred indifference, e.g., eat healthily, seek honest employment, but irrational to value them as the source of happiness. They are merely the material upon which virtue is exercised. If the pursuit of health requires a lie, a vice, the Stoic must choose the vice because virtue is the only good. Dispreferred indifference, apoproegmena. These are external things that are contrary to nature and are rationally avoided unless avoiding them compromises virtue. Examples include sickness, poverty, pain, and a bad reputation. The practice, it is rational to avoid dispreferred indifference, e.g., seek a cure, avoid unnecessary injury, but irrational to fear them. The Stoic recognizes that enduring a dispreferred indifferent, like poverty, provides the material for practicing the virtues of courage and temperance. This distinction is vital for understanding Stoic action. The Stoic does not passively embrace poverty or illness, but strives to act well and rationally in the world, justice and wisdom. They pursue health and wealth because those conditions are preferred material for virtuous living, but they maintain absolute emotional tranquility when those conditions are inevitably lost. The entire system of practices, from the morning reflection to the final achievement of the cardinal virtues, is an attempt to live out this clear, decisive classification. It is the commitment to ensuring that the quality of one's inner character is never, under any circumstance, hostage to the volatile, transient nature of the external world. This absolute self-reliance now leads us to the final existential practices of the Stoics, focusing on the ultimate indifferent, mortality. The entire system of Stoic practices is a rigorous commitment to ensuring that the quality of one's inner character is never hostage to the volatile, transient nature of the external world. This absolute self-reliance now leads us to the final existential practices of the Stoics, focusing on the ultimate indifferent, mortality. The final dissolution of the self is the one certainty that makes the present moment the only arena for virtuous action. The Stoics viewed death not as a catastrophe, but as a perfectly natural and necessary process of the material cosmos, governed by the same logos that orders all things. The body is merely a transient arrangement of matter, pneuma, that is temporarily on loan from nature. When the arrangement dissolves, the matter simply returns to the universal source. The practice of memento mori, remember death, is a frequent, deliberate mental exercise to contemplate one's own mortality and the impermanence of all things around us. This is not morbid dwelling. It is a powerful, motivational tool. By keeping death ever present in the mind, the Stoic achieves two critical goals: prioritization of virtue. The awareness of life's brevity instantly cuts through petty concerns, trivial desires, and unnecessary delays. It sharpens the focus on the only true good, virtue, by removing the illusion of infinite time. If one might die tomorrow, today's duty, kathekon, must be performed with absolute focus and integrity. Neutralization of fear. Since death is the ultimate dispreferred indifferent, something outside one's control and not a true evil, as it does not compromise one's capacity for virtue, the practice of contemplating it repeatedly strips away its terror. The Stoic becomes familiar with the idea, reducing the emotional shock should it arrive suddenly. Seneca encouraged this practice, arguing that the person who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. The person who fears death is a slave to external circumstance, but the one who accepts it is utterly free, since the worst external event no longer holds power over their rational will. The most powerful cognitive tool for achieving this existential detachment and acceptance is the view from above, hypolepsis or anascope. This practice is a visualization exercise requiring the Stoic to mentally detach from their immediate circumstances and observe their life from a vast, cosmic perspective. The practitioner begins by imagining looking down on their present city, then expanding the view to the entire country, the continent, and eventually the entire globe, spinning rapidly in the vastness of the cosmos. From this elevated perspective, the immense size of the world dwarfs one's current anxieties, problems, and social standing. The exercise further expands to include a temporal dimension. The Stoic contemplates the immensity of time, the billions of years that came before their birth, the billions that will come after their death, and the mere flicker that is their own life. The therapeutic effect of the view from above is profound. Humiliation of pride. It exposes the absurdity of human arrogance and the intense local focus on reputation or petty disputes. From the cosmic vantage point, one's fame or wealth is utterly negligible. Eradication of grief. It places all personal loss within the context of universal change. Since everything that exists is merely matter temporarily arranged by the Logos, and since every person born will inevitably die, the loss of a loved one is viewed not as a unique, personal tragedy, but as a small, necessary consequence of the universal law of change and impermanence. Reinforcement of cosmopolitanism. From the perspective of the cosmos, all human beings are seen as unified, fleeting dots on the globe, emphasizing the universal brotherhood and the irrationality of national or tribal conflict. The only thing that truly matters is the present action of one's rational will. This existential practice extends to the Stoic approach to grief and loss. The Stoic recognizes that love and attachment are natural, but the irrational passion of grief, distress, or lupe is a result of a faulty judgment. The belief that the loss of an external person is a true evil that should not have occurred. The therapeutic strategy involves 2 steps: acknowledging the loan. When a person is born, the Stoic recognizes them as a gift on loan from nature. The person is cherished, but the ultimate event of their return to nature is accepted as a certainty from the moment they arrive. Epictetus advised treating one's child like a clay cup. When it breaks, you realize it was a cup you loved. Focusing on the present. Grief often involves dwelling on the past, lupe over a present loss, or fearing the future, fear of loneliness. The Stoic corrects this by focusing their attention wholly on the present duty. The present kathekon is to honor the memory of the deceased through virtuous action and to continue performing one's duties to the living community rather than indulging in self-destructive sorrow. A critical, related practice is the contemplation of impermanence, pantarei. Though this term is originally Heraclitean, the concept is central to Stoic physics. The Stoic actively observes the continuous flux of the material world. The person watching a stream flow past observes that they never step into the same water twice. Similarly, the Stoic recognizes that they are never the same person from one moment to the next, and neither are those around them. The person we loved yesterday is subtly different today, and the person who wronged us 5 minutes ago is already past that act. This continuous observation of change reinforces the understanding that attachment to any external form is attachment to an illusion of permanence. This profound realization of impermanence and the acceptance of one's own mortality culminates in the final practice of living fully in the present. Since the past is beyond alteration and the future is beyond control, the only arena for happiness and virtue is the present action of the rational mind. The Stoic does not delay virtuous action. There is no time for procrastination or emotional drama. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you say and think." This urgency to live virtuously in the only time available, the present, is the crowning achievement of the memento mori practice. The freedom gained from the acceptance of death and the vast cosmic perspective is the ultimate reward of the philosophical life. It frees the Stoic from the petty concerns of the ego, allowing them to finally focus on the true mission, living a life defined by the four virtues. This deep self-mastery provides the necessary armor for the ultimate challenge of the Stoic life, interacting with and leading others effectively. The freedom gained from the acceptance of death and the vast cosmic perspective is the ultimate reward of the philosophical life. It frees the Stoic from the petty concerns of the ego, allowing them to finally focus on the true mission, living a life defined by the four virtues within the social context of the world. The Stoic is not a hermit. They are a rational agent who must interact with and often lead others effectively. The next set of practices details how the Stoic exercises authority, manages complex relationships, and deals with external validation, such as fame and reputation, with detachment, all under the guiding light of justice, dikaiosune. Exercising authority and leadership. The Stoic views power and authority not as an opportunity for self-aggrandizement, but as an onerous duty, kathekon. When in a position of leadership, be it as an emperor like Marcus Aurelius, a high official, or a master of a household, the primary practice is the consistent application of justice and benevolence. The Stoic leader practices impartiality, akrabeia, ensuring that decisions are based purely on rational criteria, the common good, and the principles of the logos, rather than on personal affection, political expediency, or private gain. The internal dialogue is always, what is the rational, just action in this instance, regardless of the consequences, for my own reputation or comfort? A critical practice for the Stoic in power is the acceptance of criticism and resentment. A leader's actions, being external, are subject to the flawed judgments of the populace. The Stoic must mentally shield themselves from the sting of ingratitude or misunderstanding by constantly reminding themselves of the dichotomy of control. The quality of their action, internal, is up to them. The opinion of the people, external, is not. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to seek the approval of his own reason, hegemonikon, and not the fleeting cheers of the crowd. The leader must be like a stone pillar, steady in the face of crashing waves, continuing to perform their duty even when unappreciated. Managing complex relationships. The Stoic recognizes that relationships are a chief arena for practicing patience and justice. The people we deal with, family, friends, and colleagues, are sources of constant, inevitable irrationality, making them the perfect material for exercising virtue. The practice of seeing the good in the flawed is essential. When faced with a difficult or irritating person, the Stoic must intellectually distance the person's rational faculty, their core, divine spark, from their current error, their flawed judgment. The action itself is a mistake that must be corrected or ignored, but the person remains a fellow human being, a part of the universal community, worthy of patience and instruction. Epictetus taught the practice of role reversal, or understanding the faulty premise. Before reacting with anger to a person's mistake, the Stoic mentally explores the flawed logic that led the person to their action. The person who lies because they falsely judge that lying will bring them a necessary good. The person who gossips because they falsely judge that harming another's reputation will somehow enhance their own. By understanding the lie, the anger dissolves into pity for the one who has compromised their own virtue through ignorance. Another necessary practice is the avoidance of vain discourse, catalelia. The Stoic must consciously steer clear of gossip, petty arguments, and debates over trivial indifference, like politics, sports, or external matters over which no rational conclusion can be reached. The principle is, never waste mental energy debating what is external and beyond your control, or what does not advance virtue. Conversation should be directed toward philosophy, duty, and the improvement of the rational soul. Dealing with fame, reputation, and insult. The desire for fame, doxa, and the fear of insult are considered dangerous external dependencies that destroy true freedom. The Stoic must systematically dismantle the power of reputation. The practice is the contemplation of the source. When faced with praise, the Stoic must analyze the nature of the praise. Is the praise coming from a truly virtuous, wise person? If not, why should I value the opinion of a person whose judgment is clearly flawed? If the praise is deserved, it is merely a factual report on the virtuous action already performed, and thus holds no further value. When faced with an insult, the Stoic must immediately apply the discipline of assent and the view from above. Dichotomy. The words spoken are merely external air vibrations. They have no power over the internal character. Cosmic view. The one who offers the insult is a temporary, flawed mortal, whose opinion is fleeting and will be forgotten in a few years. Why allow their momentary error to compromise my permanent tranquility? This practice leads to self-sufficiency of esteem. The Stoics' self-worth is determined solely by the judgment of their own hegemonikon regarding the quality of their choices and their adherence to virtue. They have no need for external validation, which makes them immune to both flattery and defamation. Managing possessions and wealth. The Stoic does not seek poverty, as wealth is a preferred indifferent that provides greater opportunity to practice generosity, justice. However, they must continuously guard against the psychological traps of luxury and wealth accumulation, which are breeding grounds for dependency and fear. The practice is non-attachment. The Stoic recognizes that wealth is a loan from fortune. The internal dialogue regarding a large house or a rich garment is always, "This property is mine for now, but it is not me. I am ready to return it to fortune at any moment without complaint." This practice of non-attachment reinforces the therapeutic power of voluntary discomfort. By occasionally sleeping on the floor or eating plain food, the wealthy Stoic proves to themselves that they are not dependent on their possessions and can easily manage if fortune takes them away. The Stoic possesses things without being possessed by them. The final constant practice in the social sphere is the practice of rationality in language, orthos logos. Since humans are defined by their capacity for reason, the Stoic must ensure that their speech is always truthful against dishonesty, a vice, clear and necessary against vain discourse, kind and encouraging, in line with justice and benevolence. The deliberate management of one's speech, external possessions, and social standing ensures that the Stoic remains an agent of reason in the chaotic external world, constantly aligning the discipline of action with the ultimate goal of virtue. This deep commitment to rationality in all actions leads directly to the core theological understanding that underpins the entire Stoic worldview, the belief in divine providence, and the final duty to embrace the role assigned to us in the grand cosmic drama. The deliberate management of one's actions, possessions, and social standing ensures that the Stoic remains an agent of reason in the chaotic external world. This deep commitment to rationality in all actions leads directly to the core theological understanding that underpins the entire Stoic worldview, the belief in divine providence, and the final duty to embrace the role assigned to us in the grand cosmic drama. The Stoic concept of God is not that of a distant, anthropomorphic deity. God is synonymous with the Logos, the universal, rational force that permeates and actively organizes the entire cosmos. This concept is pantheistic. God is not separate from the world. God is the world. Everything that happens is an expression of this perfect, divine reason. This doctrine is called providence, pronoia. Providence is the philosophical guarantee that everything that happens is for the best in the context of the whole. Individual events may appear cruel or chaotic to the limited human mind, but within the infinite chain of cause and effect, heimarmen or fate, they are necessary and perfectly ordered for the harmony of the universe. The most profound practice flowing from this doctrine is theodicy, the mental defense of providence. When faced with an apparent evil, such as a natural disaster or personal tragedy, the Stoic practices mentally justifying the event. How is this particular event necessary for the harmonious function of the whole? This exercise is not about finding comfort. It is about recognizing the limits of human perspective. The Stoic acknowledges that their capacity to see the grand cosmic benefit is limited, and therefore, their judgment that the event is evil is presumptuous and arrogant. The rational duty is to trust the Logos and reserve judgment, assuming the event is necessary. The concept of providence gives rise to the practice of the cosmic role, hypokeimenon. Epictetus constantly used the metaphor of the stage play. The individual human life is like a brief role in a vast divine drama. The actor does not choose their role, whether they are a king, a beggar, a slave, or a free person, but their duty is to perform the role assigned to them with excellence. The practice is to fully embrace one's station in life in the external circumstances assigned to it, practicing virtue within those confines. The slave who practices courage and justice is in their inner life freer and more rational than the emperor who is ruled by his passions. The external role is indifferent. The quality of the performance is the only thing that matters, as it is the only thing internal and subject to the rational will. The doctrine of cosmic recurrence. The final, most esoteric element of Stoic physics is the doctrine of cosmic recurrence or eternal return. This concept provides the ultimate intellectual foundation for the amor fati, love of fate. The Stoics believed the universe moves in vast, predetermined cycles, the entire cosmos being composed of a finite amount of matter, pneuma, and governed by an endless cycle of cause and effect, must eventually repeat itself precisely. At the end of a vast but finite period of time, the world will undergo a total dissolution and reabsorption into the divine fire of the Logos. This event is the conflagration, ekpyrosis. The conflagration is the grand, ecstatic vision of the end of the world. Everything is consumed by fire and returns to its purest, divine, rational form. This is followed by a period of recreation, palingenesia. Cosmic recurrence means that the universe will then be recreated exactly as it was before, down to the minutest detail. Every person, every event, every thought, and every star will be exactly repeated in the new cycle. The philosophical practice associated with this extreme doctrine is the willingness to live this life again. The Stoic must mentally confirm, I am living this life now, and I must live it in such a virtuous way that if the entire process were to be repeated for an infinite number of cycles, I would not change a single action or desire, because I know that what happens is necessary and what I choose is rational. This thought experiment is the ultimate test of amor fati. It moves acceptance beyond mere toleration and into an active, joyous affirmation of every moment, every adversity, and every action in one's life. If you can accept, even affirm, that you will live this very life countless times, you have achieved the most profound form of spiritual freedom. The aesthetics of virtue. This deep cosmological understanding also informs the Stoic practice of seeking aesthetics in virtue. Since the universe is perfectly ordered and rational, the Logos, the only truly beautiful thing is the action that reflects this order. The Stoic practices identifying the beauty of appropriate action. When a person performs their duty, kathekon, with justice and courage, that action is inherently beautiful and harmonious because it aligns with the rational design of the cosmos. By contrast, an act of vice, like greed or anger, is inherently ugly and irrational because it violates the social and rational nature of man. The practice is to train the eye to see the moral beauty of a rational choice, rather than the transient beauty of external indifference, like a jewel or a building. This pursuit of moral beauty leads to the practice of honoring the past sages. The Stoics, particularly Seneca and Epictetus, often referred to their predecessors, Socrates, Zeno, and Cleanthes, as moral exemplars. The practice involves adopting a philosophical mentor, either a historical figure or a living one, and mentally asking, what would Socrates do in this situation? This provides an immediate external moral compass when the practitioner's own reason is clouded by passion. This mental consultation helps the Procopton maintain their course toward the sage's ideal. The practice of symbolic representation. Finally, the Stoics utilized symbolic representation in their daily practice. They often used physical objects or mental images to represent core concepts. The lamp could represent the fleeting nature of life or the necessary light of reason. Seneca used a lamp to remind himself of the passage of time. The hand could be used to represent justice, the open hand offering help, or temperance, the closed fist withholding excess. The soldier represented the practice of duty and courage. The soldier does not question the order or the material conditions. He only focuses on performing the task at hand. The Stoic is a soldier in the army of the Logos. These physical and mental symbols served as continuous, tangible reminders of the abstract philosophical principles, ensuring that the theory was constantly integrated into the material world. The ultimate symbolic practice remains the view from above, which connects the single human life to the endless cyclical fire of the cosmos. This comprehensive, integrated system of physical, logical, and ethical practices is the enduring legacy of the ancient Stoics, offering a complete, demanding path to self-mastery. The final section will synthesize these practices into a complete picture, exploring the concept of oikeiosis and the practical conclusion of the Stoic philosophical journey. This comprehensive, integrated system of physical, logical, and ethical practices is the enduring legacy of the ancient Stoics, offering a complete, demanding path to self-mastery. The final section synthesizes these practices into a complete picture, exploring the concept of oikeiosis, pronounced oikeiosis, the process of appropriation, and the practical conclusion of the Stoic philosophical journey, the complete and harmonious alignment of the self with nature. Oikeiosis is the central, defining doctrine of Stoic psychology and ethics. It describes the natural process by which an organism learns to value and care for certain things. The Stoics observed that every living creature is born with an innate impulse to care for its own constitution and its own well-being. The process unfolds in two crucial stages: primary oikeiosis, the self-preservation. This is the initial, unconscious impulse where a creature values its body, its health, and its immediate physical surroundings. The baby instinctively values its own preservation and comfort. Rational oikeiosis, the shift to reason. In human beings, this process shifts upon the arrival of reason, logos. The developing human intellect recognizes that the true essence of their nature is not the fragile, temporary body, but the rational faculty, hegemonikon. Therefore, the impulse of self-preservation rationally transfers its value from the body, and indifferent, to the reason, the only true good. The ultimate practice of the mature Stoic is to ensure that all subsequent actions flow from this final, rational understanding. To live according to nature ultimately means to live according to the logic and virtue of one's rational self, completely detaching the value of the self from external, fragile conditions. The final integration of all the practices is achieved through the unwavering commitment to consistency and coherence. The unity of the three disciplines. The three core disciplines, assent, desire, and action, are not isolated exercises. They form a single, necessary feedback loop that must be practiced in unity. Discipline of assent, logic, corrects the internal judgment, ensuring the mind knows what is good, virtue, and what is indifferent, everything else. Example, knowing that an insult is merely an indifferent. Discipline of desire, physics, aligns the emotions and will with fate, ensuring the mind desires only virtue and accepts all indifference. Example, accepting the insult without emotional distress. Well, discipline of action, ethics, ensures the external behavior is consistent with the rational judgment, fulfilling duty, kathekon, with justice and benevolence. Example, responding to the insulter with calm, rational pity, or simply ignoring them to fulfill a greater duty. If the Stoic fails in assent, they make a faulty judgment leading to passion, aichis, anger, fear. If they fail in desire, they become dependent on external goods, leading to distress upon loss. If they fail in action, they compromise their virtue, leading to the only true evil. The entire system is designed to prevent a failure in any single area from compromising the entire soul. The practice of human unity. The final complete expression of oikiosis is the extension of the self's innate value to the entire human community. The rational man recognizes that since all men share the divine spark of the Logos, they are all fundamentally part of the self. Harming another is psychologically and cosmologically harming a part of one's own extended rational being. This concept grounds the practice of unconditional benevolence. The Stoics' duty to the community is not based on expectation of gratitude or reward, both being external indifference, but on the rational necessity of maintaining the harmony of the universe. The virtuous act is its own reward because it is the only action coherent with human nature. The enduring influence of the Stoic method. The ancient Stoic system, though originating in the 3rd century BC in Athens, did not die with the fall of the Roman Empire. Its influence is a lasting legacy woven deep into the fabric of Western and global thought. Roman law and political philosophy, Stoic principles of natural law, jus naturale, cosmopolitanism, and universal brotherhood profoundly influenced Roman jurists, laying the foundation for many principles of Western legal systems that hold that law should derive from universal, rational principles. Early Christianity. Many key early Christian thinkers found common ground with Stoic ethics, particularly the emphasis on duty, temperance, fate, providence, and the rejection of material extravagance. The writings of Seneca, for instance, were frequently studied by church fathers. The Enlightenment, Stoic concepts of reason as the sole guide to life, self-sufficiency, and the importance of rational judgment were key pillars for Enlightenment philosophers who sought to define ethics and politics based on secular universal principles. Modern psychology. The most direct modern descendant of Stoic practice is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. CBT's core methodology, identifying and replacing distorted, irrational thoughts, the discipline of assent, and exposure therapy, voluntary discomfort, is a direct philosophical inheritance from the therapeutic techniques of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. The entire Stoic method offers a timeless, complete answer to the human condition. It is a philosophy that offers freedom by teaching the ultimate constraints, and offers happiness by defining it not as a lucky external circumstance, but as an internally achieved skill. The life of the dedicated Procopton is one of perpetual, honest labor. It is a journey defined not by a single, dramatic moment of realization, but by the accumulation of thousands of tiny, rational choices made in the present moment. The final victory of the Stoic is not over the world, but over the internal enemies of the mind: anger, fear, excessive desire, and dependency. The inner citadel, once thought to be under siege by the external forces of fortune, is revealed to be the only place in the cosmos that is truly sovereign, truly free, and eternally capable of choosing the good. To live a life fully aligned with virtue and reason, accepting fate with dignity, and serving humanity with justice is the complete, practical answer of the ancient Stoics,